Hello and welcome everyone to a new Oxygen XML webinar. My name is Alin Belu and I will be your host for today's live event. If you asked yourselves before, how can I make my data authoring experience even better? My colleague Sorin Carbonaru, lead developer at Syncrosoft, the company that develops Oxygen XML, will be joining us in a moment to answer this question with his presentation called Working with Data in Oxygen, Basic Profiling and Reuse Strategies. But before that, it is worth mentioning that today's event is the second event in our new weekly series of live webinars that is taking place every Wednesday at the same time, 8 a.m. for US Pacific Time, 11 a.m. for US Eastern Time, and in Europe between 4 and 6 p.m. Also, I want to remind you that all of our events are being recorded and so is this one. The recording will be made available on the event page from our site and also on our YouTube channel called Oxygen XML. As we go, we invite you to ask us questions by using the questions panel from the GoToWebinar interface. Also, Alex Gitianu, development lead for the authoring team, will stand by to answer to some of your questions in real time. With this being said, let me welcome Sorin Carbonaru so he can start today's presentation. Hi, Sorin.
Hi, Aline. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this new webinar. This is the second webinar in a series about how to work with data in Oxygen. The previous one was getting started with data in and Oxygen XML editor, and you can find it on our website, oxygenxml.com, or on our YouTube channel. Today's webinar will be about basic profiling and reuse strategies, and we do plan a future webinar about more advanced profiling and reuse techniques. Speaking of reuse, did you know that there is a town in Japan where the residents managed to reuse or recycle 81% of their waste? They had to sort their waste into 45 types in 13 categories to do this, but I find it really amazing. And even though we're not going to talk about this kind of numbers in today's presentation, because this is not a realistic scenario for reusing content in DITA, I do hope that you will find this webinar helpful and that you will get better at reusing your content and profiling it. Today's presentation will be split into two main chapters. We're going to talk first about profiling, and here we're going to talk about profiling attributes and condition sets and how to publish your profile content. And I'm going to also give you a set of best practices. Then we're going to talk about content references, both direct references and indirect references. And again, I'm going to present several best practices when it comes to reusing your content. Okay, so what does profiling mean? And I'm glad you asked because it has nothing to do with the kind of profiling that you may be used to from thriller movies. We're not Sherlock Holmes here. We are doing profiling on text, and that means marking blocks of text which are meant to appear in some renditions of the document, but not in others. And DITA offers this kind of support through profiling attributes, which in the end are XML attributes like any other attributes, but they do have this metadata nuance to them. And DITA provides a set of default profiling attributes, which you can see on my slide here. But bear in mind that if you need more attributes, you can also create your own custom profiling attributes. But this is more advanced, so we're not going to cover this today, maybe in the next DITA webinar. It's already time to switch to Oxygen. And today we're working with the DITA project that is used for publishing two user manuals for two phone models, the X1 and the X2. And because this is Techtober, so a lot of things are happening in the tech world this month. Let's imagine we are launching a new product, a new phone model, the X3. So we're going to extend our project for this new model, and we're going to reuse some more content and profile some more content. If we switch to the Data Maps Manager and open this Getting Started topic and this specifications topic, you can see that I have some content here which seems duplicated. It's not duplicated. There are actually different values. And that's because my content is already profiled, and we cannot see this because we need to activate this show profiling attributes action from the profiling menu. By the way, this menu is also available here in the Data Maps Manager. It has the same behavior, the same effects, so we can use it from whichever side. So now if we activate the show profiling attributes, we can see that our content is indeed profiled. And now you may ask, where do these values come from? And the answer is they come from the profile settings. And again, we can use this menu to go to the profiling settings page. And here I already have some, I already have one attribute defined with a couple of values, and we need to extend this by adding a new value for our new phone model. So let's add X3 as a new possible value for profiling. And in the colors and styles subpage, we will assign a color for the elements that have each profiling value. So for X1, I'm going to assign a red foreground. For X2, green, and for X3, blue. And these colors will be available in the author page once we activate the show profiling colors and styles action. This is also available in the preferences page. And the colors can be seen in the author page, as I already mentioned, in the Data Maps Manager. And if we expand this in the outliner, we can see that they are also available here. Now it's time to add our content for the new model. So we're going to add a new version of Bluetooth here for the new model. So let's say version 5.2. And to add a new profiling attribute, we will right click on this element and select the edit profiling attributes action. Here we select X3 for the product attribute, and for the other specifications, we will use this menu, which is displayed when you click on the already existing value. So let's say the camera is the same and the display is the same for the new model. One thing I want you to notice is that when we have multiple attribute values, the color that is displayed is actually the result of combining the color for all of them, for all the attribute values. So in our case, we have a, I don't know, let's say a pale dark blue, which is the result of combining the green for X2 and the blue for X3. We're going to add, in the getting started topic, we're going to add a phrase element for the X3 product in a similar way as we have done in the other topic. And because our new phone has a new version of Bluetooth, I want to add a topic here under Bluetooth about Internet of Things. So we use this append child new action, which we have seen in the previous webinar as well. And here we provide a title, Internet of Things. And we have our content here, let's say, save the topic. And we need to profile this for X3 only. So what we will do is right click on the topic reference and select this edit properties action. Here we have a profiling tab, which shows us this probably already familiar component, and we select X3. And we're going to save the map. By the way, you might have noticed these squares. The field square means that the current topic reference has a profiling attribute set on it, and the hollow ones mean that the profiling is inherited from the parent. Okay, but now, moving on, now we have a problem in our DITA map. And that the problem is that the Internet of Things topic will never get published when we publish our user manual for the new model, because the Bluetooth parent topic is profiled for X2 only. And we can spot this kind of problems if we use the data map completeness check feature in Oxygen. Here we have this option which will identify possible conflicts in profiling attribute values. And if we perform the validation, we will get this message here, which tells us that indeed this value can never be effective because it's not present on the ancestor. Therefore, we're going to assign this value to the ancestor also. And we're going to perform the validation again. And now the validation is successful. So this is how we define attribute values in the preferences, and this is how we use them in our data topics as well as in our data map. Now that we have discussed about profiling attributes, it's time to go to move on and talk about profiling condition sets. In Oxygen, a profiling condition is actually a pair made of a profiling attribute and a profiling attribute value. So for example, we have the condition that the product is X3, or another profiling condition is that the audience is expert or technician or something else. And Oxygen allows you to aggregate this kind of profiling conditions as condition sets or filters. And using these filters, you can preview which topics from a data map will be published, or which text sections from a topic will be included in the output. Or we can also use the condition sets when actually performing the publishing, when we generate the filtered output. So moving back to Oxygen, we will go again to the profiling settings page. And here in the lower half, we have the profiling condition sets section. As you can see, we already have the condition sets for the previous products. So we will add a new one for the new model, the X3, and we will check the X3 under the product attribute. And this is how we create a very simple, a basic condition set. We will see these condition sets in the profiling menu here in this section. And when we select one of them, for example, X3, Oxygen will gray out the content that will not get published. And this will be seen here in the author page and again in the outliner. And if we profile in a corresponding manner, we'll also see it here in the data maps manager. And there's one more option that I want to show to you, although I don't know if this is I wouldn't recommend using it usually, but if you want to see a more compact version of your content, you can deselect this show excluded content action. And as you can see now, the content is hidden. It's not grayed out anymore, it's hidden. But because I am afraid I might accidentally delete some content and mistake it with the excluded content, I prefer seeing the content grayed out because I want to know that it is there. Okay, so now the next step after talking about condition sets is to talk about how to publish your profiled content. As those of you who watched the previous webinar may remember, I mentioned that Oxygen uses the DITA Open Toolkit publishing engine when publishing the DITA content. And the DITA OT uses DITAVAL files to filter the content that is being published. DITAVAL files are basically XML files with a certain structure, and a DITAVAL file corresponds to a condition set. When publishing, if we don't provide such DITAVAL files, such a DITAVAL file to Oxygen to serve it to the DITA OT, Oxygen will automatically create a DITAVAL file from a provided condition set. And DITAVAL files can also be used in Oxygen for importing profiling attributes and condition sets and colors and styles into Oxygen's preferences. So let's see how a DITAVAL file looks like. I already have defined DITAVAL files in my project, so let's open the one corresponding to our new product. And the way we can the way we read such a DITAVAL file is as follows. So this DITAVAL file will exclude all the elements that have the product attribute set to X1, and will also exclude all the elements that have the product attribute set to X2. That's because we only want to publish the content corresponding to X3. And we also flag or we highlight all the elements that the content of all the elements that have the product attribute set to X3 using a blue foreground. So we actually try to replicate what we have done in the preferences. And I mentioned that we can import the DITAVAL files in the preferences in order to extract the profiling values and conditions and colors and so on. So I'm going to remove what we have already defined and import them from the DITAVAL files. We're going to use this import from DITAVAL button, and we will select all the DITAVAL files because we want to import all the profiling attributes and values. And you can see that here we have the same values, and here in the lower half, the condition sets are loaded from the DITAVAL files. And we have a similar action for importing colors. Again, we select all the DITAVAL files, and the colors are the same as before. And if we apply the changes, we can see that nothing has changed in Oxygen. So now let's move on to the main thing, which is publishing profiled content, because that's why we talked about profiling attributes and condition sets, because we want to use them when publishing. And we're going to use this configure transformation scenario action, and we're going to duplicate the web help responsive transformation scenario. We're actually going to duplicate it twice because I want to create a transformation scenario that uses condition sets and a transformation scenario that uses DITAVAL files, because I want us to see that the result will be the same because we configured the DITAVAL file and the condition set to be to correspond to each other. So we're going to duplicate this, and this will be the X3 user guide using DITAVAL files. And here under the filters tab, we will provide the DITAVAL file. We're going to browse in the file system and choose the DITAVAL file and click OK. This is the first transformation scenario. We're going to duplicate the default one again, and this will be the X3 user guide using condition sets, CS for condition sets. And here we're going to select this condition set for X3, and we will also change the output directory because we don't want to overwrite the result of the first transformation scenario. So now we have our two transformation scenarios, and we're going to apply them at once, both of them at the same time. The transformation is running now, as we can see here in the console. And as I already mentioned, we will notice that the results are the same for both transformations. So this is the first one, and the second one is coming. So as you can see, we published for X3, and the content is flagged using the blue color. And this is the second one, as you can see here. So it's the other output directory. The content is the same. It's the same also in the specifications topic here. So the results are identical for both the condition set and the DITAVAL file. That's because Oxygen automatically created for the case where we use condition sets, it automatically created a DITAVAL file. So the last slide for profiling, the profiling section, is the one with a few best practices. So first, take care to limit the complexity of conditions. So don't go overboard. If you can write in a context agnostic way, oftentimes it's probably better to do that. If you need to exclude a whole topic from the output, profile the topic reference as we did in our case for the Internet of Things topic. But pay extra attention to the child references to avoid profile attributes conflicts, and use the validate and check for completeness action. So instead of going in the topic and adding the profiling attribute on the topic root, add the profiling attributes on the topic reference in the data map. Third, try to profile only block elements, or if you cannot do that, at least profile whole sentences. That's because if you want to translate your content, translation will become very difficult if you don't go this way. There is, however, at least one exception. You can profile untranslatable constructions such as product names, as we have done in the getting started topic with the phone models, the X1, X2, and X3. Use minimal styling, use only one styling for an attribute, and use different styles for different attributes. For example, use only foregrounds for the audience attribute, use only backgrounds for the product attribute, and so on. Now let's talk about content references. Content references are used to pull content from an element in a topic to an element in another topic, and usually the same data element is used on both sides of the reference. Direct content references are based on file paths and element IDs. So we provide the file path to the topic where we want to extract the content from, and then we provide the ID of that topic and also of the element that we want to reuse. And direct content references are defined using the conref attribute. So let's switch back to Oxygen. And here, let me close this. Here in my data map, I have a submap where I created this topic, which if we look inside it, has a list of steps, all of them having IDs because all of them are or will be reused. We can have a quick overview of all the reusable components that are available in our project here in the DITA reusable components side view. If you don't see it, you can go to Window, Show View, DITA reusable components, and it will be displayed. And under the components tab, we can see all the reusable components that we have defined here. And these are collected if our topic is referenced in the data map using this processing role attribute set to resource only. So this makes sure that the topic, the warehouse topic, will not be published. This is used only as a resource. And if we want to see the components in the components tab, we need to make sure we add this attribute on our topic reference. This tab allows us to filter the content and by providing an arbitrary text, and it also allows us to filter the content by providing an element type or filter it by using a certain source file. And here in this settings menu, we also have a compact mode, which I actually prefer because I can see more components at once. And if you need to expand a specific component, you can use this arrow here to expand it or to collapse it whenever needed. Okay, so now it's time for us to learn how to create content reference, direct content references. I'm going to go back to the main map and open the insert the SIM card topic. And here at the bottom, I want to add a new step. And I'm going to go with full tags to make sure I'm in the right place. So what we can do is use this reuse content action, and we need to select the location of the topic where the components are defined. So this is our reusable topic. And here we have again all our reusable components, and I want to add this one. So I'm selecting it and clicking insert and close. So this is how we created our first content reference. And if we look in the text page, as I mentioned in my slides, the content reference is created by using this conref attribute, and we use the location of the warehouse topic, the ID of that topic, and the ID of the element that we reused. A simpler way of creating content references is to copy the element from here. So we're going to use the breadcrumb here, copy the element, and here show the contextual menu, go to the paste special submenu, and select this paste as content reference action. So this is easier. But the way I prefer doing it, and the way I actually recommend it to you, is to use this DITA reusable component side view. Why? Because you avoid switching context. So you don't go to another dialog, you don't go to another topic. The context is the same. You simply go here and select this insert content reference action, or simply double click and the content reference will be inserted. Now let's move on and talk about indirect content references. But first we have to talk about keys. In DITA, key definitions bind key names to resources such as files or keywords. And when we simply say key, we usually mean the key name. A key reference, as the name suggests, is a reference to a key, and this is done by using the key name. And key references are indirect references to resources because we don't directly reference the resource. Instead, we reference the key, which in turn references a resource. The example that we have in our user manual is that of a postal office box. So it doesn't really matter what your home address is. You will always get your letters, your mail in your PO box because that stays the same. Indirect content references, which are based on key names and element IDs, are defined using the conKeyRef attribute. So now we use key names, we use keys which are bound to specific topics, to the topics where we have our reusable components, instead of using file paths. So let's move back to Oxygen. I'm going to close this. And here in my reusables data map, I already have some keys defined. And the keys are defined using the keydef element. And we reference the resource if it's a file with the href attribute, and we give the key a name using the keys attribute. And here I have a key definition to a DITA topic. Here I have some keys used for binding images, and I also have a key definition to a keyword. As with the reusable components, we can see the keys here in the DITA reusables reusable components side view in the keys tab. The keys that we see here are collected from the current route map. So now we have to talk about what is a route map. A route map is, as the name suggests, a top-level DITA map. And when Oxygen collects the keys, it collects the keys from that top-level DITA map, as well as from all the sub maps. And in our example, I don't have any key defined here in this route map, but I do have them in the submap. And the route map can be set using this drop-down menu, and I have it set to the current map. So if I have multiple maps here in the DITA Maps Manager, when I select one, Oxygen resolves the keys based on the selected DITA map. Okay, now it's time for us to define keys using Oxygen's actions. In order to define keys, I'm going to open this map in the DITA Maps Manager, and in the contextual menu, we have this key definition action, which can be used to define keys to files or using keywords. In this first example, I'm going to create a key pointing to a certain topic, let's say the insert battery topic from here. And we're going to give a name to the key. Let's say insert battery. and we simply select insert and close, and now we have a new key defined. If we want to define a key definition, if we want to create a key definition to a keyword, we can use the same action and go here to the metadata panel, or for an easier approach, we can select the key definition with keyword action. And here we provide a key name, let's say support email, and the keyword that will be reused is our support email address, support@oxygenxml.com. I'm going to save the map, and here we have our second key. If we want to create keys for every reference that we create, every topic reference that we create in the data map, we have an option in the data preferences new topics subpage. This option from here that if we select will create keys, and the key names will be identical to the file names of those topics that we refer in the data map. By the way, in the next version of Oxygen, we have redesigned the data preferences page and the sub preferences page. So this will be moved in another page, I think. But in the current version, it's here. So I just wanted to point that out. Okay, and now if we create a reference to another topic, let's say insert sim, you can see here between the curly brackets that a key has been defined, and we can see it here in the author page as well. But I don't need this, so I'm going to delete it and save it. And now it's time for us to create key references and content key references. For doing that, we're moving back to this getting started topic, and I'm going to insert, I pressed enter to show the content completion window, and I'm going to create a new paragraph. And here, let's say I want to say something like, for further information, contact us at our email address. So for any information, contact us at, and here we can reuse our key that we have defined for the support email, and we can double click it, and we inserted this key reference, which is actually a phrase element with a keyref attribute, and we refer this support email key. If we want to create a content key reference or an indirect content reference, we can use this action again. And now instead of providing the location as a file path to our warehouse, we use a key because I have another warehouse topic with some other reusable components. And the key to that topic here, reusable components with keys.data, the key is reusable with keys. So we select this, and now we can see the reusable components here in the list. I select the desired one and click insert and close. And as with content references, direct content references, I could have also copied the element in this reusable warehouse, and then I could have used this paste as content key reference action. Okay, so this is pretty much everything I wanted to tell you about content references, but I want to go back for a couple of minutes to profiling, because when we talked about profiling, we didn't have this notion of about keys and route maps and so on. So now I want to show you a way of profiling content using keys. I'm going to close all the other files except this one. And for using keys for profiling content, I defined these two maps, and I will also create a new one for X3. And as you can see, all these maps do is create a reference to the main map. Both of them create a reference to the main map. And in this new map, which becomes the root map now, right? Here I defined a key phone model with keyword, and the keyword is x1. And for x2, I created a key with the same name, but the value is x2. So now instead of profiling content using profiling attributes here with 3 phrase elements, I can just insert a key reference to this key. And as I mentioned, the key will be resolved based on the current, the current root map. So here for x2, the value is resolved to x2. Here for x1 is x1. And let's create a new submap for x3. So this is going to be the x3 user manual. Create. And to add the main map, we go to the contextual menu, append child map reference. We select the map, insert and close, and we already know how to define a key with keyword. And we give the key the same name, so it's phone model. And the keyword now is x3. We save the map, and the key now is resolved to the desired value. And now if we publish the content again, we will see that we have the desired value for our phone model. In our case, we publish the X3 user manuals, so we should have X3 here in the getting started topic, but we won't have the highlight, the flagging for the DITAVAL file, because we don't use profiling attributes anymore, we use keys. So this is the result of publishing our DITA project. I'm going to close the web browser and move on to our last slide, where I have a few best practices for using your DITA content. So first, use warehouse topics for your usable components, as you have seen me doing in this webinar. Organize your reusable content by, for example, creating separate warehouses for product names, images, and so on. Use naming conventions for your IDs, for your key names, for your file names. And as with profiling, whenever possible, reuse block elements. If you need to reuse content in line, then you should reuse whole sentences only, and we have the same exception. You can reuse untranslatable constructions such as product names, as we have already done in our getting started topic with that phone model key. So with this, my presentation ends, and I hope you found it helpful. Now it's time for our Q&A section. So Alex, can you help us? Do we have any questions?
Hello, everyone. Um, Thank you for this insightful presentation, Sorin. Yes, we have quite a few questions here. So the first one is there a way to export profiling attributes and sets to DITAVAL files? So Sorin showed how to import them into Oxygen. This is the reverse. So currently we don't have a built-in way of exporting what you have inside options to a DITAVAL file. Perhaps we'll add such an export actions. We'll have to think about it. But in theory, if you already have the DITAVAL files, then there's no need to duplicate all this information into Oxygen's own options. If for some reason you still want this, then a workaround that you can use is when you publish using a condition set, a condition set configured inside Oxygen options, you should not just set a parameter to keep the temporary directory, and inside this temporary directory you will find a generated DITAVAL file. So at publishing we take those internal profiling condition sets and we generate the corresponding DITA file out of it, and this can be found inside the temporary directory. The second question, can I call the same transformation scenarios several times using different DITAVAL files from command line? For instance, I want to create PDF for each 3 phone models in command line console. The answer is yes. If you, of course, you can run the DITA Open Toolkit from the command line as many times as you desire, specifying a different DITAVAL file each time. And in case you want to publish to Oxygen's own formats, publishing formats like the Web Help Responsive or the PDF, which is based on CSS rules and HTML5. In this case, you can use the Oxygen publishing engine for DITA. It is available for download on our page, on our website, sorry, and it basically bundles all of our patches to the Open Toolkit and all of our output formats, and you can launch it from the command line like you would with any Open Toolkit. Does profiling works using reusable? Does profiling works with using reusable components, or is it better to use only one of the both things? Well, they can be used together. It depends on each situation and use case. For example, you can make a conref. You can reuse a block in which there are multiple profiled sections. So they are meant to be used together to complement one another.
Alex, if I may, and
Yes,
if I understood the question correctly, we already use both of them because in the getting started topic.
Oh, in your examples, okay.
Exactly. In the getting started topic, we have this key, profiling using keys, and in other topics we use profiling attributes. I don't remember specifications. So if we look inside this topic, we can see that we use profiling attributes.
Yes, so we can use one or the other, or even both of them together. How can I reuse entire data files or topic from one data map to another? Well, you just refer the topics in both maps through topics refs, and I think Sorin showed that part as well. So it's the same topic, it sits in the same location, you just add the references to it from different maps. Okay, and a couple of other questions that came right at the end. If reusable components is included to target page, will all relative paths to will be updated in included fragment? For instance, relative path to image in fragment needs to be updated regarding the new host page location. I think the Open Toolkit will handle all these path-related issues, so you don't have to worry about them. So the output will have all the references correctly resolved. When should conrefs be used versus conkeyrefs? Sorin, do you want to answer this? I think you've
Well,
made a clear case. But...
so when should you use them? Alex, could you please mute your microphone?
Right.
Thank you. Well, now it kind of depends on you if you want to use one or the other. But I think usually it's a better idea to use keys because it's probably, instead of creating direct references which can break easily, you have those keys. Key references can also break sometimes, but you can perform validations and spot the problems. But you need, if you have, if you use keys, I think it's a better approach usually, and that's why we have so many actions, including that option, actually the option from the preferences, so you can easily create keys when adding new reference to your data map. Alex, do you want to add anything else?
Well, I agree with what you said. Indirection is good as a principle. So some people who are well known in the DITA community would answer to this question with always use keys. Yes. So another question: what is the best location in the CMS for warehouse files? Does it matter whether or not multiple writers will be using the warehouse files? Well, the place where CMS keeps its reusable content depends from one CMS to another. So it's in their best practices, in their architecture. So there's not much you can do there. If you use a CMS solution. If you choose to keep your documents in a version control system, like for example Git, then you have the liberty to decide how you organize your files, where you put the warehouse topics and so on. Does it matter whether or not multiple writers use the same? Well, I think the idea is for them to the warehouse topics. The idea is to keep the reusable content in this warehouse topic, so that writers know they are intended to be reused. So when they want to make changes inside this content, they also before that they see in which context it is used, so they make the changes knowing the full implications. And secondly, you put them in the warehouse topic so that they are easily found and reused, right? Instead of people creating the same content all over again, or maybe creating a reusable content but putting it someplace where nobody else will find it. I hope that answers your questions. Do you use the scope attribute when defining keys? If so, how? What are the best practices? Well, if you are referring to key scopes, then stay tuned because in the next presentation, well, maybe not necessarily the next webinars, but one of the next webinars that we are planning, in one of these, we'll also talk about key scopes. Sorry for off-topic question. I've noticed that you are using Git component in Oxygen editor environment. Is it part of Oxygen installation package or could be downloaded separately? Thank you for a great presentation. Sorin, do you want to answer that?
I'm so glad you asked about it because I'm one of the main. I'm actually the main contributor, I think, to this project. This is an add-on. This is a separate component that you can install going to the help menu here in the install new add-ons action. You select the default update site, and here we should have, where is it? Oh, I don't see it. It's probably because I already have it installed. I guess that's why, but that's where you find it. Because if I go here to manage add-ons, you can see that I already have it installed. So that's probably why I didn't see it in the other dialog. So this is a separate, this is a plugin, and it's free to use. You simply go to that help menu, install new add-ons, select the default update site, and install the Git client.
Yes, and we just released a new version the other day, so.
By the way, I had this in mind and I forgot for a second. We also have a webinar. I also presented a webinar about how to extend the functionality in Oxygen using add-ons. And you can look for that on our website, on our YouTube channel. And I also discuss the Git add-on, which contributes more than this side view. It also contributes to other side views. The Git branch manager being the last one added in the version that we recently released. So if you want more information, you can search for this extending the functionality of Oxygen using add-ons webinar, and you can find some more information about the Git add-on and some other add-ons as well.
Well, I think we answered all the questions. So maybe now Aline would like to say a few words.
Yes, thank you, Alex. Well, first of all, let me thank you and Sorin for answering the audience's questions. And of course, thanks to everyone for being this involved with our event for today. Let me take control back. Okay, so before going, let me talk a little bit about our upcoming events. As I've told you in the beginning of this event, this webinar was the second of our weekly webinar series that is taking place every Wednesday. So next week, we will have an introduction to XSLT using Oxygen XML editor. We will learn how to process XML documents with a combination of XSLT and Oxygen. Then we'll go to October 21st, where we will launch a new mini series of webinars in its own called Transforming HTML Documents to PDF. On October 21st, we will have the first part. And if you are a technical writer who wants to be able to define the look and format of your document, but struggling to grasp the basics of CSS, then this webinar is for you. And be assured that there will be no need for you to have any CSS background. And on October 28th, we will have the Explore Web Author Beyond Technical Documentation webinar, where we will learn how Web Author comes in handy in so many cases, allowing you to build guided procedures where new users won't require additional training or validation, this being one of the cases. Of course, many more webinars will be scheduled in the upcoming weeks, so be sure to check our page of events where you can also register for free. With this being said, we reached the end of our event for today, and I want to thank again our presenter, Sorin Carbonaru, for joining us today, and with the help of Alex Gitiano. And a big thank you to everyone for joining today's event. So, see you next week, and bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.